This is a recap of the Monday, July 11th City Council meeting. Before the meeting tonight, we had both a closed meeting and then a work session. At the work session, we got an update from the autonomous vehicle project titled Go Marty, which was good because we haven't heard from them, at least I haven't heard much since sometime this winter or early spring. So found out that they've had their community listening sessions. They had 3 different sessions with one session devoted to service providers and agencies, another to the business community, and another to the senior community that would most likely be using these services. Over 20 different organizations provided input, including where the vehicle should run or stop and the hours, etc. Community raised some issues, and so those issues were addressed, including accessibility and safety, the need for the availability on nights and weekends as a supplemental service to other services in town, the ability to access rides without technology or the app that would typically be used to order the rides, and which stops are ideal for the pilot project. This is the longest route that May Mobility has ever run. The route would be about 16.5 square miles. There are 69 total stops on the project, including at entertainment venues, churches, shopping, grocery, services, senior and residential sites. The services would include places like hospitals, post offices, courthouses, the civic center, libraries, schools, etc. So we got that update. There will be 4 vehicles in service at any one time, plus 1 serviced in reserve. The prototype's going to be based on a Toyota Sienna minivan type. It will be hybrid. It'll be ADA compliant, room for luggage, and each vehicle can hold 4 total passengers, and including wheelchair. You could have 3 plus somebody in a wheelchair, plus luggage. So there was more information, and we will certainly be hearing more, but things are happening. They're hiring people right now. You can go to the gomarty.com website, GO_MARTI.com, if you'd like to find out more information. They will be at 4 different community events. I didn't write them all down, but including Tall Timber Days, Riverfest, etc. With that, we moved on to the regular meeting. There were a number of items today, including a few from the consent agenda. Maybe I'll just quickly go through. One of those was we accepted the low bid with KGM Contractors for the overlay project on 7th Avenue Southeast, commonly referred to as the Airport Road. And I know that I've been receiving correspondence about the shape the Airport Road is in, and people didn't know that that actually was part of our projects this year, to do an overlay on that with conjunction with the other work that'll be done on the Airport Road and River Road especially. We also donated, we also are getting rid of a couple of old fire engines. Engine 115 is going to scrap. It's not usable anymore. And then 116 is not usable on the road. We can't get anybody to, we've tried to sell it, unable to sell it. And so we're actually donating it to the fairgrounds, Taft County Fairgrounds Board, and they can use it to water down the parking lot, keeping the dust down on their parking lot. We can't drive the thing around, but we can keep it located in one spot where they can use it for the purposes that they need it for. So we're glad to do that. Also, we appointed in the consent agenda election judges for the 2022 elections. With that, we moved on to the regular agenda. A few items worth noting. 2 of them have to do with the Civic Center. Tonight, as we've discussed for a couple years, but tonight we finally approved a language for a referendum to go on the November ballot to establish a local sales tax for the city of Grand Rapids for the IRA Civic Center improvements. This will give the community a choice of how they want to pay for it. We have received money from the state and other agencies, but certainly we do have to match some of that and pay for some of that with local funding. So With a sales tax, 60% of the funding then would come from outside of city residents, which actually corresponds with the usage of the building. The usage of the building is 60% non-city residents. And so it just kind of works out that way, that the funding would be roughly the same, in the same range. So that will be on the ballot this year for city residents to vote on, and you can choose if you want to have outsiders help pay for the cost of the building, or we pay for it all ourselves. And so that language has been established. I think one thing to note is that sometimes we get a lot of questions, well, that tax will just keep on going. And the answer to that is no. By state law, once the agreed upon amount is reached, whether it be it's a six-year sales tax, and it will end either at the sooner of the end of that 6 years, or as soon as the dollar amount is reached. So if the dollar amount is reached in year 3 or 4 or 5, that tax will end early. And that's state law. That's nothing the city or a future council can do. If they wanted to ask for another sales tax, they would have to go before the public again. So there is a time certain date on it, and it is a 0.5% ask. Moving on, then we awarded a contract to a local construction company, TNT Construction, for bid package 1, which is the supply and installation of the wood trusses and decking at the Civic Center. We were happy we had local bidders. We had 2 of them, and one of those did receive the bid. It's just a little over the estimate that we had a few years back, and so we're really happy with that. We assumed it would be way over, and it was actually just a little bit over because of inflation. We assumed it'd be much higher than it was. So we are happy that we got an estimate closer to our original, or we got a bid closer to our original estimate, and that it was a local contractor that got it. The second bid, I believe, we didn't talk about it tonight, but I believe the bid for the rest of the building will be open sometime in August. For some reason, the 2nd or 3rd week of August rings a bell with me. We then moved on to community development. Some of you might be interested in what's happening with the old Forest Lake school site. The city has been trying to trying to find funding available to create 24 houses on that site that are affordable for workforce housing. The idea was to have them similar to the former middle school development site, which is across from the current school district administration building between Pekegama and First Street Northeast. First Avenue Northeast. Because of the cost of housing nowadays and the inflation, the cost versus the funding available, the funding sources available that we typically are able to draw on, or we try to draw on, there's still a very large gap with that. And we're going to continue to work on building more. But in the meantime, we've had an offer, and tonight we approved a resolution to create a community land trust single-family housing development on 8 of those 24 sites. The community land trust will be owned by a One Roof Community Land Trust out of Duluth. They have similar projects there and other places. And so what that means is that the people who purchase the houses are only purchasing the homes and not the land itself. They would have a long-term lease on the land, but not own the land. So that helps bring down the cost of the house, which makes it more affordable for people. So it's a different method. It is being used across the country and across the state. I believe this is the first, at least as far as I know, it's the first time we've done this in Grand Rapids, but it's a creative way of trying to create some housing for people that's affordable. And so it would be for 8 sites, 8 homes. There would still be 16 sites available that we will look at in the future of how to get those developed. The gap funding from MHFA, the application is due July 14th. So we have to get that application in. We'll hear either in December or at the latest January, February, whether we received that. And at that time, then we would consider the TIF portion of that project in the future. We don't have to commit to anything right now. We just have to see if the funding is even available so we can even consider the project. So we appreciate the creativity that city staff and others have put into looking at that, including the county HRA. We then moved on to two items from the police department. One is we approved the purchase and payment of a EDI-USA Level 3 ballistic shield for the police department. And secondly, we pulled an item from the consent agenda so we could have more discussion, but we did allow the police department to solicit bids from local dealerships for a chief's administration vehicle and two building rental inspector vehicles to put them into this year's budget rather than next year's budget. We do have increased non-tax fees that have come in this year and grants that have allowed us a little more flexibility to purchase those this year rather than out of next year's budget where they would have to come out of tax funds. And we know things will be tight next year, so we are going to do that this year and not have to put them on the next year's tax rolls. With that, we adjourn the meeting. We meet again in 2 weeks on July 25th and hope everybody's enjoying their summer, and we will give you a recap at that time. Thank you.